Hello there. It's very nice to have you with us in our webinar devoted to listening in PT Academic. Just 1 or 2 minutes for everybody to log in. Right. I can see your in the chat box. If while you're logging in, just maybe a little bit about where you're from here. So I can see hello from Poland, right in my chat box. So Ukraine, great. Thanks for joining us. Latvia and Nepal and Vietnam and Malaysia. Right. So all over the world and India and Pakistan. Good. And Bulgaria. I hope it's not that hot in your places and you feel comfortable. We're going to spend together around 45 minutes discussing listening. And Saudi Arabia, great. Okay. Thanks. So this is it. You can see the chat box. This is, as I said, open in my screen all the time. And please feel free to use this chat box if there is anything during the webinar today that you'd like to share or you'd like to ask, just use it. There's also a Q&A box, as you can see. This Q&A box will be monitored by Vanessa, who is with us today behind the scenes. And if there are any questions related to the administration of PT Academic, then she will be answering the questions in the Q&A box. I will refer to this Q&A box also after my webinar in case there are any questions about the webinar today. Before we start, just to remind you, you will receive a certificate after the session. The certificates will be sent to your email boxes, so don't be afraid. Yes, because you very often ask about the certificates, so don't be afraid. You will receive them. Good. Okay. So I think everybody is logged in and we can move on. So as you can see, PTE Academic Listening Challenges, embrace listening challenges. And let me start with the statement that I think that listening is the hardest skill to learn and to teach. And what would you say, if you could share for a moment in the chat box, what would you say, what are the biggest challenges for our students when it comes to listening skills? So let me have a look at the chat box if you have any ideas to share. So vocabulary, right. Accents, absolutely. They might be hard to understand sometimes. Speed, concentration, connected speech, note-taking, right. Listening for details or details, pronunciation. Vocabulary again. So you have a lot of ideas. Thank you very much for that. And well, I have decided to look at 4 challenges that are especially relevant for PTE academic listening. And actually, those that you have mentioned, some of those will be there. So let's have a look at the challenges that we're going to discuss today. So the first challenge, right, let me have a look at that. So students can have difficulty to identify the main ideas, supporting points, implied meaning, or implied information to fully understand the passage, right? That's the challenge that will be, that they will have to face, especially in, not only in real life, but also in the test room situation. Another challenge that they will have to face and they have to embrace is this inability to understand some of you mentioned that, the meaning of unfamiliar words in recordings full of advanced vocabulary. So vocabulary definitely is a challenge, especially in the context of PTE academic. Another challenge that they have to face is also mentioned by you in the chat box, they might have difficulty to effectively take notes and simultaneously comprehend the audio. And another one, this fast, also mentioned by you, the speed, some of you mentioned that, so fast rate of speech that can make it difficult for students to comprehend the overall meaning. So these would be the crucial challenges that students face while taking PTE academics. So let's have a look at them one by one. We're going to have a look at PTE academic tasks, listening tasks, and how they, and we'll have the ways how they can deal with these challenges while taking specific tasks. So let's have a look at the first challenge, and challenge number one. Students might find it difficult to identify the main ideas, supporting points, implied information, these elements. And this is the challenge, this is the difficulty, especially problematic in multiple choice tasks. As you know, those of you who are not new to the exam, you know there are two multiple choice tasks. There is this multiple choice single answer task, where students, after reading the text, test takers answer a multiple choice question on the content or tone of the text by selecting one response. So they simply click the response. That's one multiple choice task. And here the scoring is just correct, incorrect, as simple as that. But there's another multiple choice task, obviously, where there are multiple answers, and after listening to the recording, test takers, they have to answer multiple choice questions, and they select more than one response. And here the scoring is partial credit. So they get a point for each correct response, plus points might be deducted for incorrect options. So that's these are the types of tasks in which this understanding the main idea, supporting points, inferred information is especially problematic. So let's have a look at some strategies that I might suggest for this kind of task, the strategies that we should, well, develop in teach our students. Obviously, and you mentioned that this taking notes is an important skill. We're going to discuss this today. So this is these are the tasks where this taking notes is important, and this is important to teach them to take notes effectively, to take notes of keywords, main points, supporting details. It's important that they, the test takers, they listen for the meaning. Obviously, there will be some words from the options used in the listening, but sometimes these words will be paraphrased, so they have to listen for the meaning. They shouldn't just focus on the words from the options and look for them in the text they're listening to. Obviously, that's the skill that we have to teach them. Another important strategy, especially for multiple choice, is to listen for the general flow of ideas. They shouldn't worry about unknown words. They shouldn't focus on things they don't understand, because probably there will be a lot of moments they cannot understand some individual words, but it's important to listen for the general flow. They shouldn't stop here. They listen to the text and they go, as if to say, with the flow. And what is important also here for the multiple choice is that they should focus on the identify the focus of the question, because they will have a different focus, the questions in multiple choice. Sometimes they will ask them to listen for the main idea, sometimes supporting information, sometimes they will be listening for the speaker's purpose, sometimes they have to infer some information. And it's important for us teachers to show them how they can identify the focus, because the focus will direct them, will help them to listen to this particular question. So some activities to inspire you to work, to take those activities into your classroom and practice some specific sub skills for some specific tasks. So here we're discussing multiple choice. And with multiple choice, well, let's start with the most obvious thing. When we practicing listening, not only multiple choice, any listening for PTE Academic, it's important to find the source of material that you can work with. Obviously, this official guide to PTE Academic or question bank, PTE Academic question bank, these are good sources. But there are a lot of other good sources, and the most obvious seems to be TED Talk. Those of you, I mean, probably most of you are familiar with TED Talks, but I know if you haven't used yet TED website, this is the time to do that because it provides great tool for preparing activities. So you can create exactly exam items or complete lessons on your own. It provides you with this tool where you can select topics, where you can create your multiple choice questions and answers, and you can easily share the questions or share the lessons with your students over many platforms. So that's a great tool. If you haven't used that yet, I mean, TED Ed specifically, this is really great source of material for any listening tasks towards preparing your students towards PTE academic. So once we have identified a good source of listening material for our activities, let's have a look at another one, the activity in which they will practice multiple choice listening to this kind of task. So once you have a talk, a lecture you have selected from Question Bank or from TED Talk, TED Ed, you can take some phrases from a lecture talk that might, the phrases that will help students choose the correct option. So you have to analyze the transcript beforehand and put the phrases on small pieces of paper and place them in front of small groups of students. Well, small groups could be 5, 4, something like that. 3 is also fine. So there's a group of students sitting in a circle, possibly with some phrases in front of them on pieces of paper. And what you do here, you play the activity. I mean, sorry, you play the talk, you play the lecture, or you can read it out, right? If you have no possibility of playing it and they are listening to the text, to the lecture, to the talk, and they grab the phrases when they hear them. So that's a great activity in which they really stay focused. Some of you mentioned that as another challenge for listening, that they stay focused. And they listen for specific phrases. Then afterwards, you can discuss these phrases, discuss this passage, and show them why these phrases are important, for example, to answer options in a multiple choice. There's a lot of movement, competition, so it can bring some, I would say, life into your classroom, especially towards maybe the end of a class where the concentration levels go down. Another multiple choice activity that will help you practice this kind of listening here and embrace challenges connected with listening here would be a task in which you take any multiple choice listening task. Again, could be created on your own in TED Ed or could be taken from a question bank, PTE Academic question bank, and beforehand, you have to go through the tape script and find expressions that refer to the options in the question. And you paraphrase the expressions beforehand, right? So expressions from the tape script, you choose 2 or 3 expressions and give the paraphrases to the students. And you ask your students to listen to some extract, to some passage, and identify the original expressions. So this is what I mentioned. This is one of the strategies that we teach them. We should teach them to listen for the meaning rather than listen for particular words or expressions that they can find in the options. So you can play the extract to your students and they find the original expression. So let me check with you just to show you how it works. So listen to the passage. I'm going to play a passage for you. And can you identify the original expression that is equivalent to remove vegetation? So let's see if you can do it. Okay.
Certainly one of the first things that happened as increasing waves of colonists arrive was the need to clear the land. And this clearing of the land is something that started really in the form of small subsistence farms. The timber was used for building houses, for building ships, for firewood, for all manner of things.
Great. I can see answers appearing in the chat box. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with me. Obviously, that's the...
Certainly one of the first things that happened as increased...
Okay. Obviously, this is that's the phrase "clear the land," and this way you teach them, right, to listen for the meaning rather than to listen for the words, specific words from the options. And obviously, you can run it as a competition, right? For example, you can have many items, and the winner will be the person with the highest number of guessed phrases, I would say. Okay, so let's move. Thank you for engaging in that. Thank you. So all those with clear the land were the correct answers, obviously, here. And let's move to discuss challenge number 2 that I have already mentioned. So challenge number 2 that they have to embrace during, especially during the PTE academic, but generally students have to embrace when listening to anything. So students might not be able to understand the meaning of unfamiliar words in recordings full of advanced vocabulary. So some of you mentioned this vocabulary issue at the beginning of our meeting today, and that's a challenge, especially in the context of PTE academic. Well, this is these are the listenings here are set in specific contexts. These are typically lectures, some academic talks, and they are full of well, items of vocabulary that might not be known to our students. So this is our task here to help them overcome or embrace this challenge. And that obviously that will be a challenge in any task here. But I would say that fill in the blanks will be especially important here. This understanding of the vocabulary is especially important because they have to identify specific vocabulary items in the listening. So let's have a look at what it looks like for those of you who are new to this examination. So fill in the blanks. The transcript of a recording appears on the screen. There are several gaps, right? And after listening to the recording, test taker type the missing word in each gap. So scoring here is partial credit. So they get a point for each correctly spelled word. And this scoring here affects this listening and writing. So the score goes, the result goes both to listening and writing here. So for this type of task, the strategies that should be taught, that should be developed in our students, it's important that they look around their gaps. There are a few seconds before the recording is played, so that's the time they can look around the gaps to predict the words, the kind of word that they might hear and that they might expect. it's important to teach them to be very attentive. So that's the task in which they have to be very attentive, and they have to keep listening and writing, and they should not worry about spelling. They should not worry about the correct forms. There will be some time later on after the listening that they can correct the words. So they keep writing down the words or typing the words. As they hear them, they will correct any mistakes later on. And obviously, after listening, it's important to just go back, look at if the words fit logically or grammatically into the sentence. So these are the basic strategies for fill in the blanks. And as far as activities are concerned, because, well, for fill in the blanks, a problem might be, a common problem would be the vocabulary issue, right? Understanding vocabulary, understanding the words that should go into the blanks. So an activity with which you can work on the vocabulary, you can, improve your students' vocabulary bank or vocabulary repertoire. You have to work with some lecture, or you take a passage from a lecture, or you can take a talk from, again, a question bank or TED talk, or anywhere else, and you give students a list of 20 words. 10 words are taken from the transcript, and 10 words are not from the transcript here. So they get a list of, let's say, 20 words, where just 10 have been taken from the transcript, from the talk, from the lecture. And you also give your students grids. Well, probably the best option here would be a 6-field grid. And what they have to do, obviously, you also tell them the topic of the passage they're going to listen to in a moment. And the task is they select from the list of 20 words, they select 6 that they expect to hear. And this is a good opportunity to go through the words, discuss them, right, explain any unknown words here. So as I said, you're working with vocabulary, so you can, those 10 words that are not from the transcript could be added by you, and these could be the words that you want them, for example, to get familiar with. So this is the moment where we can discuss the vocabulary, and they just, after they have got familiar with all the words, once they understand all the words from the list, they choose 6 words that they put into the grid that they expect to hear in this listening activity, in the passage. So, and after that, you just play the recording, and they listen to the recording, especially focusing on the words, and they cross out the words in the grid if they hear them, right? So simply speaking, the winner will be the first student that has crossed out all the words, and this student will shout bingo, right? That's the bingo activity. Obviously, it might happen that no student will have all 6 words in the grid, so then the winner will be the person with the highest number of correctly predicted words, so 5 or 4. A lot of vocabulary work, also focusing on the vocabulary, focusing on individual items in this listening passage, the skills that are actually necessary for fill in the blanks, and this the activity that will help your students develop the vocabulary. Another activity in which you also can develop vocabulary and work towards fill in the blank activity, you again take an extract from a lecture or a talk, you play it or read it out to the students, and you pause it a few times. In some places of your choice, right? So they don't know, so they cannot expect where the pause will happen, simply speaking. And students' task each time is to write down the last word before the pause. So they have to be very attentive, focused, And well, for this activity, you can choose the words, right, that you want to work on. For example, the pronunciation of these words. So you want them to focus on those. That's up to you. These are the pauses are up to you where you put them. So the winner will have all the words from the text, the words before the pauses spelled correctly. So let's have a look at an activity like that. So I'm going to play a short passage to you, and can you play the last word? Can you write down or type in the chat box the last word before the pause? So listen carefully. And what's the last word before the pause? So be focused. Listen. Okay.
We've decided to adopt, just as a loose theme for the course, a biological theme, so that you can see the connections between chemistry and biology and the things that you might consider.
All right. So that's it. Great, fantastic. Right, you have seen for some time, you have seen the progress bar here, but obviously when you're reading out, there is no progress bar, or if you're playing that, your students wouldn't be able to see that. Obviously, thank you very much for being here with me, and thank you for all those correct answers. Obviously, the last word before the break was "you might consider," and here you can also work towards well, for example, you have this word "consider," so you can analyze this word and you can discuss with your students what they predict to hear next, for example, right? That's also a good preparation for this select the correct word activity. But you can also discuss, right, for example, that consider it can take ing form, right? So you might expect some ing form here. So there is a lot of place for further discussion. You can discuss how consider behaves, what's the grammar of this word. So you choose which words you want to focus on, and you choose where you put pauses. And obviously, you can make it in a very competitive way. A little bit similar activity, I would say, also in which you can practice vocabulary a little bit, discuss some vocabulary items, and where they can practice some strategies, fill in the blanks, and where they can well, practice being focused on individual items in the listening. So again, you take a short extract from a lecture or talk. You give each student or the group, right, or your class, you give 3-4 words from the extract, but these are words that must appear only once in the extract that you're going to read out or play. And you play the extract or you read it out, that's up to you. And students' task is to write down the words immediately before and after those words that they have been given. So this way you can focus on some collocations, for example, and again, how the words work, and they get familiar with the words that you select for this activity. So let's see. And obviously, the winner will have all the words spelled correctly. And let's see with you. So I'm going to play a short extract here. And can you write down the word immediately before and after the word position? So just to show you how this activity works. And normally you would give your students a few more words, not just the one word, just like I am giving you this word position. But let's focus on that. So a very, very short extract and the word position. Can you identify, can you listen for the word immediately before and immediately after this word? Let's listen.
If you think about light bulbs, they're an enormous infrastructure. They're in every building in the world, more or less. They have kind of a privileged position above us, around us. They can see, if you think about it, most parts of any room.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. I can see some answers in the chat box. not an easy one, actually. Obviously, this is an authentic piece of material. Just as in PTE Academic, the listening material is authentic. So great, thank you very much for participating in that activity. Good, and let's have a look at that. That was the moment, privileged position above us and around us. That was it, right? So privileged and above. And again, that's a nice activity where you can select the words and you can discuss some collocation issues, some position in the sentence, some grammar of the words. You can work on the vocabulary repertoire with it. Challenge number 3, let's move on. And the challenge that I mentioned, challenge number 3, this also mentioned by some of you here at the beginning, that students might find it difficult to effectively take notes and simultaneously comprehend the audio. So generally, well, obviously, in real life, taking notes is maybe not a universal skill for listening, right? Because in many cases we cannot take notes. But within the academic context and within the context of PTE Academic, taking notes is a crucial, absolutely crucial skill, especially for some tasks. And those of you who know the exam, you know probably that it's absolutely crucial for this kind of task. Highlight correct summary, and taking notes is absolutely important, because that's a listening and reading activity, as you will see, those of you new to the exam. So that's what it looks like. So in this task, after listening to a recording, test takers select the paragraph that best summarizes the recording. So this is an activity that engages both listening and reading, but actually it's absolutely impossible for students to do these two things at the same time, listening and reading, because what they listen to is different from what they can read in the summaries. So it's not following the text, but it's listening first. So they have to understand that listening passage, and then they read the summaries and they decide on the summaries. And here is where taking notes comes in. The scoring here is just correct or incorrect. And as I said, the scoring, this question type, affects the scoring of listening and reading. Some strategies for this type of task. Obviously, it would be very useful for students to be able to skim paragraphs beforehand, before they start listening, just to get the overall sense of each paragraph, but before listening, obviously. And while listening, taking notes is crucial, right? Focusing on the main ideas, identifying topic, sentence, identifying maybe some supporting details. So taking notes, that's a strategy, absolutely crucial. And obviously, after having listened to that, being able to eliminate options based on the key points from the notes is another important strategy skill for this kind of task. So taking notes, something that we should teach our students. Probably a very important technique when it comes to taking notes is developing some uniform system of abbreviations and symbols, right? So that they can very easily and I would say automatically use abbreviations and symbols while taking notes in the exam. Very important to develop, to work on that. If your students don't have any system like that, so it's definitely worth spending some time on that. So my question is, again, use the chat box. What symbols or abbreviations would you suggest for the following words? And well, just 3 words. I wonder what symbols or abbreviations you would use, and with somebody. Any suggestions from you? So do I get any suggestions? Great. So ampersand right here, W and slash, obviously. Great. Yeah. Right, so this is exactly that, right? So it's good if your students have some kind of if your students do it automatically, that some words they automatically change into abbreviations, change into signs, for example, something like that, right? But obviously, this is just one of the ideas. W and slash is probably very, very common and very often represented by plus. Somebody, you had some ideas like SBD or SB, something like that. So work on that. So you can use the internet. I know also ChatGPT can help you with that. Some lists of symbols and abbreviations for the most commonly used words, for example. And help your students work with it. I mean, do it automatically. So once you have the list of symbols, you can give them short sentences to transcribe. Like you can read out the sentences, or you can give them the sentences in writing. For example, look for somebody with results and recognition, right? And you get back the results like that. So once you have introduced the list of possible abbreviations and symbols, it's important to work on them. You can do the same with recorded sentences or in pairs. So working on a uniform system of abbreviations and symbols so that they automatically use those. This is worth spending some time if you can see that your students are not good at taking notes. And another activity that will help your students take notes effectively would be kind of competition. So you divide students into pairs, or that could be two groups, and each student or each group listens to a different passage, right? So you give them two passages, and that's best done for homework, right? You send them for homework two different passages, right? So one student listens to passage A, and another student listens to passage B. And what's important here, they have to take notes while listening according to the rules you set out, like, for example, using abbreviations or using some symbols that you have previously taught them. So they have to take notes. And what is important, once they have taken the notes, they have to exchange them after that, right? So they exchange the notes, and here, for example, student A looks at the optional summaries of student B's passage, and what is important, they have to check or guess the correct summary based on the notes taken by student B. So what is important here, they choose the summary based on the notes of another student, not based on the listening, but they have to use the notes. So and you can make it competitive. So for example, student B gets points only if student A guesses the correct summary, for example. So student B will be trying to make the notes as good as possible. So this is an activity in which they will practice taking notes, and they will practice taking meaningful notes because the other students has to use the notes to guess the summary. Let's check if you can guess the correct summary. Let's see. Have a look at the notes here. Come on. Okay, sorry. Okay, right. Look at the notes for a moment. So from a listening passage, and in a moment I will display two possible summaries, and we'll see if you can, from the notes, right? So there's no listening actually. You have to decide from the notes which summary is correct. So let's have a look at that. For a moment, look at the notes. And please use the chat box to tell me which do you think is the correct summary of this listening passage that was listened to while taking the notes on the left. Is that A or B? Mm-hmm. Right, exactly, right. I can see your answers in the chat box. Right. The correct answer is B here. B is this correct summary, and this is the idea behind the activity. They have to make notes, and these notes, as I said, must be meaningful because they want the other student to guess. Because they will get points when the other student guesses from the notes which summary is the correct one. So a lot of taking notes, meaningful notes, will be practiced while doing this kind of activity. And let's move on to challenge number 4, also mentioned by some of you at the beginning here. So students might find it difficult to comprehend the overall meaning due to the fast rate of speech, right? Which is problematic generally. Listening in everyday life situations, this rate of speech, the speed of speech is a challenge, and especially it is when it comes to PTE academic. And here there will be 2 tasks that I'd like to have a look, and where this challenge is especially visible, I would say, this going along with this fast rate of speech. The first one is select a missing word. This is this kind of task where, after listening to a recording, test takers select the missing word that completes the recording from a list of options. So the recording stops at some point, there is a beep, and they have to select the correct option that continues this particular sentence. Here, the scoring is simply correct and incorrect, so they have to be very attentive. They have to follow the speaker, and in order to be able to guess the correct finishing for the sentence. So strategies here, obviously very important to be able to skim. So the skill of skimming that we discussed last time when we discussed reading is an important skill here, so that they can gain an idea of the topic and which options will be more probable than the others according to this topic. And they have to listen for the development of speakers' ideas, right? So how the idea develops, and listen for any signal words showing the direction of the talk. So any discourse markers showing, like, for example, I'm going to contrast some information in a moment, for example, I'm going to add, right? Or I'm going to show cause and result. So those discourse markers would be crucial here. And obviously, they shouldn't stop at any unknown words, because they have to go with the flow here. They have to follow the development of ideas. So there's no time here to stop at the places they can't understand. And obviously the here, just a technical thing, maybe not that much connected with listening, but keeping an eye on the progress bar in the screen, especially towards the end of this progress bar, is important, because that's the signal that the recording is going to finish in a moment. So an activity, just to put it in some kind of competition, this skill of following on the go and identifying some words that are missing. So take some sentences. So take a sentence. You give students the topic of the sentence, for example, and you play or read out the sentence one at a time to the students. And you stop it at some point. And what they have to do, they have to predict the word that follows. What is important for this activity is that they write it down, the word, and show you, but they can get 1 point if they can guess the type of word. For example, noun, verb, or something like that. And they get 2 points if they guess the word itself. So you introduce this element of prediction a little bit. What kind of word could follow? Because this prediction here is very important, based on, like, following the text. The winner will have all the words spelled correctly, or will have the highest number of points. If they haven't guessed the words, they might have guessed at least the type of word. And another task where this rate of speech, the speed of the speaker is especially challenging, would be highlight incorrect words, type of task where test takers can see the transcript of a recording. It appears on the screen. And while listening to the recording, test takers identify the words in the tape script that differ from what is said. So they have to follow very carefully the speaker. Here, this is partial credit. So each word guessed correctly gets a point, but points are deducted for incorrect options that are chosen. So this is another task in which points are actually can be deducted from the overall score. And this question type affects listening and reading again. So strategies for this highlighting incorrect words would be obviously scanning the transcription beforehand, a few seconds to do that for content words, and working out the pronunciation of these words, just the most important ones. Obviously, there is not much time for that. They have to be extremely focused here, and this is to teach them this being focused. They cannot miss any words, so they have to follow the transcript very carefully. Preferably, again, this is a technical thing in the exam. Preferably, they should use the cursor to follow the speaker and the transcript. And they should not stop to think, right? Obviously, we have to teach them this just going with the flow, right? Not stopping at some elements, just clicking when they hear something that is wrong simply in the tape script or transcript, I should say. And highlighting incorrect words, an activity that I would suggest, well, an activity that you can play with a group of students, and one option is that you play it with students and they move, or you can do it without movement. So you take a group of students and you prepare some easily confused pairs of words. For example, affect, effect, allusion, illusion, official, officious, things like that. So again, you can work on your students' vocabulary with this, so you can go through the words that you want your students to learn. The important thing is that these are similar, as far as the sound is concerned, similar words. You display one pair on the board, just as you can see here. So one word on the left and one word on the right. The group of students is, let's say, standing in front of the board. If it's possible, if it's not possible, they can simply raise their hands. And you take a sentence containing one of the words and you read it out or play it, right? Depends where you take the sentence from. And they decide, they listen to the sentence and they decide if that was the word on the left or the word on the right in this short sentence, and they step to the right or they step to the left, or they raise the left hand or right hand, right? I can see Yasmin mentions that you do this activity with students. I like this activity. Well, not every group will be, well, let's say, reactive enough for this kind of activity, because, well, they have to feel free to move, right? They shouldn't be ashamed of moving. So it wouldn't work with every group, but I find it very useful with most groups, that there is some movement, some fun, some engagement in it. So although that's an activity that you'd do with young learners typically, I mean, students, college students, they sometimes like it as well, right? Because this is quite relaxing also, especially towards the end of the class. And, well, this is what it works like. So what about you? Listen to a sentence like that, and you tell me which word is used. The left-hand one, affect, or the right-hand one, effect, which is used in this short sentence I'm going to play. So listen to that.
Nicotine adversely affects the functioning of the heart and arteries.
Okay, so use the chat box. Fantastic. Santa was the first one. Yeah, exactly. That's it. And to do this kind of activities, to perform this kind of activities, it's a great source for this sentences like that would be online dictionaries, where you have ready-made statements or sentences containing the words that you're interested in. And plus, you have this option that you can play directly from the online dictionary, the sentence. Or there are a lot of great tools. If you just Google text to speech, you get a lot of AI tools where you can paste or type the text, a sentence, and you can select voices and they will be read. Actually, the one that you listened to was read by an AI tool. So if you have individual sentences that you want to play to your students, you will find a lot of tools online. So and that would be, for example, this natural reader here is a great tool to do that. Okay, so that's this is the fast rate of speech that we discussed here, and this highlight incorrect summary. So let me move towards the end of our meeting today. So I hope that I have shared some inspirational ideas and just a few takeaways from me before I ask for takeaways from you. So when working with listening, show your students how they can identify the main ideas, supporting points, implied information in a passage. So help them develop strategies to identify these elements. They will be especially useful for multiple choice tasks. Make sure that your students keep expanding their lexical repertoire so that they can understand recordings full of advanced vocabulary. So work with this vocabulary repertoire and help them develop that, show them different techniques, and use maybe some activities from today's webinar to expand their lexical repertoire. Well, show your students how they can effectively take notes and simultaneously comprehend the audio, so especially note-taking. Show them some strategies, maybe some classic strategies of taking notes. I know, mind map, outline notes, whatever. Or just simply you can, because these are typically short passages, so they don't need any specific systems, but at least abbreviations and symbols and this uniform system of abbreviations and symbols would be a great tool for your students. And, well, one more takeaway here. Right, expose your students to fast rate of speech, so recordings with fast rate of speech, and show them how they can comprehend, how they can follow, how they should follow with a fast speech and still be able to do exam tasks. So these are some takeaways from me. What about some takeaways from you? Could you use the chat box to share if there is any takeaway, something that you're taking away with you from this session? So some practical activities from a takeaway from Yasmin. Yeah, some TED Ed. Yeah, this TED Ed is, well, because typically we talk about TED Talks, right? And this is how we use it. But after talking to some fellow teachers, a lot of my fellow teachers, they use TED Talks, but somehow they were a little bit afraid of using TED Ed. But it's a great tool, this TED Ed. Right, some new ideas on lesson plans from Hillary. Great, thank you. All right, so some activities. These activities that we're discussing in these webinars will be, well, gathered together, collected, and they will be made available. So after the last session, devoted to writing, which is actually what I'm going to display right now, right? Inviting you to another session on the 15th of August. So after the last session, the activities from the webinars will be put together into a PDF document where that will be made available to you. Okay, let me just have a look at Q&A. Right, if there's any So there is a, I'm just looking at Q&A, this Q&A box, and there is a question about most students say that main issue about spelling mistakes. They also see vocabulary words, still there is no improvement. Obviously, spelling is an issue, right? When it comes, obviously, it's an issue when it comes to writing, and we're going to discuss spelling next time when we meet and discuss writing. That's obviously an issue. When it comes to listening, the spelling might be a problem with fill in the blanks activity. Obviously, also this summer activity, which is part of listening that we're going to discuss in August. Obviously, it requires a lot of work, a lot of showing them transcripts and revising the vocabulary. Well, it just doesn't come just like that. It requires, obviously, a lot of work, especially that this English spelling is, well, not an easy one, but you can also show them, we talked about it a little bit in the first session, you can also show your students some regularities, because as a matter of fact, there are a lot of regularities. You can find online a lot of tables showing that, for example, some letter clusters produce specific sounds in a specific environment. So a lot of spelling issues might be shown to your students as actually being regular spelling of some specific sounds. Obviously, there's this question of case sensitive, so fill in the blanks is not case sensitive, so you don't have to worry if you put this capitals. There is a question about from Rahine, is there any resource book to teach PTE? Well, obviously, absolutely, the crucial and the basic source of material would be this official guide to PTE, which is in 2 versions for students and for teachers. You can also, draw on the question bank available online. So if you go to the website, PTE academic website, you will find a lot of material there that will help you to get your students ready. And obviously, you can, if you're working with college students, you can use a lot of college material. So they're material that is used in textbooks, for example, or some recorded lectures and talks. So there is a question why there is less practice material for test takers. I wouldn't say there is less material. Obviously, just as I mentioned beforehand, if you look, first of all, the website to be checked is official PTE academic website, where you have a lot of sources for your learners. There are also a lot of material. There is also a lot of material published from some other publishers, so you can find absolutely a lot of material, and you can create a lot of material on your own. There are a lot of recordings available, just as I said, this TED Talks, or a lot of reading, also material that you can take from textbooks. And there is a question, what about podcasts? Can it make it possible for them to tackle it? Absolutely. Podcasts are obviously another great source of listening material for listening. But here I would be careful with podcasts and select them carefully, because, well, obviously the kind of language in podcast might be different. and I would go for podcasts that discuss some scientific issues, some academic issues, rather than, let's say, general knowledge issues, because we're looking for specific vocabulary, specific kind of talking, right? So go for those podcasts that discuss scientific issues. And a question from Marina, if these activities can be adapted to other academic courses. Absolutely. These are actually the activities that those activities that I have presented here today. These are activities that I do with my college students, because I teach postgraduate students physics, business, and some data analysis postgraduate students this year. They have a course of English for special purposes, which is designed for the specific field. But well, I simply adapt the material to these activities, and I do these things with my students. As I said, for example, this step to the right or step to the left activity is maybe not every group will be that. A lot depends on the kind of group, but wouldn't be loved by some groups. But it's also an activity that could be easily adapted to some material that you're working with in your university courses. All right. And a question from Marina: what do you think about ChatGPT, safe and no safe applications? Well, I mentioned this ChatGPT previously, that as far as preparation for, I'm talking preparation, I'm not talking preparation for PTE Academy. I'm not talking like students writing their papers using ChatGPT, but ChatGPT as a tool that will help you develop some material for teaching. And it's a great tool, I would say, because you can easily create. I talked about reading material, but you can also prepare some listening material. So, for example, you can give a prompt like that. Write an extract of a lecture about, I know, quantum physics. And you will get a passage of, I know, 200 words, and you can easily either read out that, or you can use this text-to-speech tool to transform that into speech, and you have also a great listening material. So I would say that ChatGPT is a great source of material for preparing students, right? Obviously, you have to be critical. Just check maybe a little bit the text for some maybe factual problems in it, which might happen with ChatGPT, but it's a great source of material. Okay, so this is 60 minutes altogether. So thank you for being with me today. That was great having you. Thank you for engaging in the activities and answering this listening questions. That was great having you. Enjoy the rest of the day today, and see you. Well, please join me on the 15th of August for the session devoted to writing. Thank you very much.